October 22nd, 2025 Policy Committee meeting. We're going to start with approval of the September 24th, 2025 Policy Committee meeting minutes.
I will move those.
I'll second. All in favor? That's unanimous. All right, now we'll move on to 1.3, which is public comment. The board in this committee views public comment as an opportunity to hear concerns of the public. Public comment will be received by this committee on issues relating to policies currently being reviewed with the understanding and expectation that it is not considered a question and answer platform with committee members. Consequently, the committee will not provide a response to public comments presented in its meeting or submitted in writing. The committee will provide a maximum of 40 minutes, and all speakers will be limited to 2 minutes for their public comment. All right, and she's already stepped to the podium, Ms. Dana Mooney.
My name is Dana Mooney, parent of an FCPS student. In reference to the draft of Policy 443, Section 2, Use of Preferred Names, Item 2, students and staff will not be disciplined for declining to honor the request to use a preferred name or pronoun. This is harmful. This gives permission for students and staff to repeatedly harass a student with their dead name and dead pronouns with no repercussions or investigation. This should read that students and staff who decline to honor the request to use an affirmed name or pronoun should respectfully use the student's last name. Purposely harassing a student by repeated misgendering and the use of a dead name will be investigated and will fall under the bullying and harassment policy. In Section 7, Training and Professional Development, under E, why are we adding while ensuring the parental right to direct their child's religious upbringing is respected? As a teacher in MCPS, and I am sure as teachers in FCPS do, I will follow the school policies and the opt-out policy which is already in place. I don't get a list of religious rules each family is following at the beginning of the year. Trainings cover the need to be respectful of various backgrounds, including religious backgrounds. There is no need to add this line into Policy 443. But the most dangerous is the Section D, Implementation Part B, when it states that a student's parent should be told that student is transgender when doing so does not place the student at risk of child abuse. If a teacher or staff suspects child abuse or the risk of it, they need to report that. That has nothing to do with the unpredictable, unforeseen potential for abuse, neglect, isolation, homelessness, or conversion therapy if a student is outed. In multiple other sections, the board acknowledges the importance of parental involvement in the lives of students and the encouragement and support for parent communication. So there is no need for this statement in D, Part B, Item 4. There is much more that I wish that we could add to Policy 443, but at the very least, don't water down the protection it provided previously until it is just a paper that you push forward to say you tried. Please keep our students safe.
Thank you. Next, we have Peter Brim.
Good morning. My name is Peter Brem. I'm a resident of Frederick and a board member for the Frederick Center, the local LGBTQ+ resource. First, I would add, as previously testified, I would add in the policy to expressly permit and encourage the use of getting to know you forms at the start of the semester, listing the student's name and pronouns so that the teacher has the best opportunity to recognize and affirm students. Second, regarding and amplifying upon Ms. Mooney's comment in Section 7E, I would also recommend striking while ensuring parental rights to direct the child's religious upbringing is respected. First, FCPS should acknowledge and affirm trans and non-binary students, which is what Policy 443 does. We know our trans and non-binary students exist. This is a fact. Policy 443 does not ask FCPS to encourage or promote that a student be trans or non-binary, which strikes me as being a religious consideration. So I don't think this is really appropriate in this policy. Moving to expression of identity, number 1, subnum 1B, Roman numeral 4. I agree with Ms. Mooney that this is should be struck. First, it's redundant because in Roman numeral 2, any individual to whom the student expressly authorizes the staff to disclose such information should include the parents. And as Ms. Mooney said, not only is this redundant, but we don't know, other than child abuse, what the implications are of outing a child to the parents. I can speak to that from personal experience. Finally, we need to recognize and affirm that it is the student who has the agency to disclose the student's sexual identity or gender identity. It is not up to the school to do that, and so the student should be in control of that process, as it is stated in other parts of the policy. There are other items. I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move right on to 1.4, which is policy 443.
So policy 443, if you're following along on the agenda packet, I would encourage you to start on page 27. We've done something a little different with this particular policy in terms of the backup documentation. Usually we have a marked up copy and a clean copy. In this case, we have a marked up copy, a clean copy, and then a copy that reflects the notes, the ideas that each of the board members have put forward through other avenues. That way we can see all of it together in the same place. When we left off, we had completed section A, and the section A is reflected with the conversation that we had at the last meeting, but I understand that there may be some further edits potentially, Mr. Rose?
I was just responding, I think everybody got mine. I just responded to some of the proposed edits that were included in the red line version that you gave us that was quite easy to work from. And I just responded to each box, so I just.
All right, so then A stands as is?
A stands,
Okay.
I think A and.
A and C. Right, so one of the additional things I put at the top of the section, because we're working so fluidly through and very detailed through, was just a note to tell you what the status of that section is. So A and C were completed at the last meeting, and B we did not discuss because we were waiting on definitions, and we can pick up with D. We did say that we were going to kind of start fresh with D, even though we did have some discussion about D1, so that's why you don't see any of the adopted changes incorporated into the draft.
Just to start at the very top, I only responded that Ms. Allen had made some suggestions about editing the title. I made a slight edit to one of her suggestions. I'm open to maintaining the title as is, only changing gender non-conforming students to gender diverse students, or I'm open to the title that I just kind of tweaked that Ms. Allen provided, which is Building Inclusive School Environments for Transgender and Gender Diverse Students.
I would be in agreement with the title that you are proposing, the one that edits my title, but the one that you had published to the committee.
Ms. Yoho?
Okay, now I've got too many documents. So remind me, I was trying to bring yours up. Thank you.
Kind of together, what we've proposed is the title would now be Building Inclusive School Environments for Transgender and Gender Diverse Students.
Thank you. That's the one that I would prefer as well. Appreciate
Okay,
it.
so we've cleared that. We're going to incorporate that title.
So, wait a minute. We're not doing the ensuring inclusive school environments for transgender and gender diverse students.
Ms. Rose, in your
In your
printout,
proposed,
you have
yeah.
ensuring inclusive,
Yeah.
not building.
Oh, okay.
So is it going to be building or?
Yeah, let's do ensuring inclusive school. I don't know, I have that. Yes. Sorry about that. Thank you. Good catch. Yeah, thank you.
And then I see, oh, I'm sorry, were you going to go ahead and move down?
I'm going to go ahead and move down. Like I said, since A is clear, move into definitions. And I think that I'll start, I would like to, since we're incorporating the phrase gender diverse into the policy, I just would like to add the aforementioned that I've already supplied for gender diverse. It's below 2 in the box that has been added.
I would be in agreement to add that, considering we have it in the title of the policy.
So, Ms. Rose, is the definition in the box the same as what's on the piece of paper you handed out? Or you sent us via email?
That was the yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I think the language is a little stronger in the one that you had sent to the policy committee. You're indicating that in the box, the definition refers to individuals whose gender identity, whereas the one that you had sent us after this was put together is defined as individuals whose gender identity. So I feel that the language that you had sent after you had proposed this language is probably something that I would prefer over what we have here.
Okay. Is that clear, Mr. Blevis?
Yes.
Thank you.
Had that got adopted, Ms. Allen, as it was proposed by Mr. Rose originally, I would have taken refers out because we use is defined to mean or is defined as our structure. So that was going to happen anyway.
Perfect. So next is the discussion around the definition of gender dysphoria.
I read Ms. Monier's position on this, and I do understand from a medical side of things.
Ms. Allen, before you dive into your comment on it, why don't you share so that everyone understands what you're referring to?
Thank you. Ms. Monier had sent in some comments to the policy committee in regards to definitions that refer to the DSM-5 or the DSM-4. And she is indicating that as a registered nurse, she has taken an oath to do no harm. As an elected member of the Board of Education, I took an oath to put the needs of the students, families, and schools at the forefront of my decisions and deliberations. For that reason, I cannot support including language drawn from the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, DSM-5, or similar medical sources in this policy. It's a clinical manual intended solely for the mental health professionals and not for shaping education policy or defining student rights. I think that the purpose for, and I'll just speak to the reason why I had asked for that to be included, is that this may come before staff at some point because children of a certain age may be diagnosed with this. So I think it also is a health concern. It is something that it would be privately shared based on the child's needs in what is needed in the school environment. Does it need to be in the policy? I would say yes. And I made reference to where the definition came from, basically.
Yeah, I mean, we are using gender dysphoria in the policy. Mm-hmm. So we do then include included in definitions. We're not specifically referencing the DSM, but we're gleaning our definition from it. So,
and it isn't really. My purpose is not to put it in here as a mental disorder or some kind of pathological disorder that this child's been diagnosed with. I think it's something that lends to giving a full breadth of what children may be going through at a certain period in their life.
Go ahead, Ms.
Agreed. And at some point, because I'm wondering, all right, how do we refer to it? And then we define it without using the but at some point, I think, I don't know, there's so much here. We actually say that as diagnosed by a mental health professional, correct? So wouldn't they then use that? The diagnosis would require a professional to use that definition. I don't know how we get away from a medical definition.
I just looked at it being okay with including it because we just have to accept the fact that we may be faced with this. I mean, just like kids are diagnosed with depression or anxiety. What we're not saying is that all transgender students have gender dysphoria, because they do not. Some do, some do not. Some gender diverse students have gender dysphoria, some do not. But what we are doing is we're defining the term, because I think we have to accept the fact that it may occur. We may have a parent come in, they may say, they may wish their child to.
And I will add that, first of all, the definition that is presented by staff is noted as DSM-4. That's because I didn't realize there was a DSM-5. So we know that that is not going to be the definition. Both of the definitions that have been proposed by Ms. Allen and Mr. Rose derive from the DSM-5. They reference you reference the DSM-5 for us to know where it came from, but the definition does not. And the definition is not the full definition out of the DSM-5. It's an abbreviated definition. So I don't know if that will satisfy Ms. Monier's concerns. We'll find that out when this gets before the full board, if you propose to incorporate one of the two definitions. But that brings me to the question of which of the two definitions, because it sounds like you are leaning towards incorporating a definition for gender dysphoria.
The only difference, I think Miss Allen's is just shorter. I think.
Yeah, honestly, I think that maybe, if you're pulling from the broader, I would go with your definition, honestly. It lends more to the complete definition of it.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and just add that definition, and we'll address that at first reading if Ms. Monier has concerns. Okay?
And thank you for pointing that out, because I do see where you have inserted is defined as, so.
And then we move on to number 8, which is intersex, and the definition there. And I'm comfortable with Miss Allen's definition with the recommendations from staff of the edit.
I agree.
All right, we good there, Mr. Blevis? And then I'm also good with 14, transition. There's no reason to have that in the policy. Let's just delete that.
Agreed.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to sit with that for a minute. Can we table that and then come back to that? I just want to sit with that for a minute.
Okay.
Thanks. I'm not sure I really want it deleted. We may need to refine it, but I don't know if we should delete it.
Well, the reason to delete it is that that word is not used elsewhere in the policy. And so we don't typically define words that are not being used.
Okay. Then
It's not an issue with the definition itself. It's that it's just not a term in the policy.
Okay.
Can we do this, take it out? If for some reason we bring it back into the policy, then we'll revisit that?
I would be in agreement with that.
Okay, so for now, let's delete it. If for some reason the term ends up in the policy, we'll certainly go back and revisit the definition.
I guess I was thinking, along the lines, and I'll give you a little bit of my thought process, is that this actually is a process in which transgender, individuals may be in a position of transition. So that's just.
Okay. All right, let's move on to the D1. And Ms. Allen had proposed changing the header to students' rights and confidentiality. The only change there, I said maintaining the students' expression of identity, rights, and confidentiality. Because right away in A1A, we talk about expression. So I'm happy to include rights and confidentiality. I think that's a great suggestion.
I would be in agreement with that.
Me as well.
Good with that, Mr. Blevis?
Mhm.
One will now be expression of identity, rights, and confidentiality. Then I only had one change to 1A, which was replace gender nonconforming with gender diverse. That's just because we've defined gender diverse, and gender diverse includes gender nonconforming.
That's on the second line of A.
Do we use
We do have a definition for gender nonconforming.
If possible, I'd be comfortable with, what I'm comfortable with is replacing all references to gender nonconforming with gender diverse, and then we can delete the reference to gender nonconforming as a definition.
I would think that if we're going to eliminate gender nonconforming, then we should be aligned with the definitions as we've done for all the other language that's here. So,
It's an easy replace all.
Let's do it.
So just to make sure I'm clear, that sentence will now read transgender and gender diverse students have the right to discuss ...
Correct. The remaining, I'm proposing that the remaining part of that paragraph remain the same.
When you say remain the same, do you mean keeping in what staff is proposing to strike out? The fact that it's.
No. I'm talking, what you already have in
Gotcha.
black, remaining the same.
Okay.
I'm only recognizing that Ms. Allen did send through, I want to recognize that Ms. Allen did send through a recommendation to strike.
And to decide where, when,
Yes.
and with whom.
My recommendation is that we leave that paragraph, other than changing gender nonconforming to gender diverse, that paragraph maintains as is.
Yeah, I would like to see that part kept in as well.
Okay, so let's move on to 1B, and Ms. Allen proposed a paragraph on confidentiality and information to create a new 1B. And I think I just made a slight edit to what Ms. Allen wrote. The new 1B, if approved, could be confidentiality of information. The fact that a student may wish to use a different name or pronoun at school, or to disclose their transgender or gender diverse status, that's the change I made, to school staff, does not authorize school staff to disclose a student's personally identifiable or medical information outside of what is permitted under law. All such information will be kept confidential in accordance with applicable federal, state, and local privacy and student record laws.
So the only change is the across-the-board change we're making
To
already.
gender diverse.
To remove gender nonconforming and replace with gender diverse.
I would be acceptable to that paragraph, now becoming 1B.
thank you. I would be in agreement.
Just so I'm clear, there's a B in blue.
That will become C.
That's now C.
Okay, so we would insert the 1B
And
with the one
I kind of
change.
referenced that in mine. I wrote 1C, formerly 1B, to try and keep us a little bit.
Kudos for you to be able to
Unconfused.
track that, because I didn't even attempt to do that.
I make no promises that it's totally. So now, as in blue, FCPS staff shall not disclose a student is experiencing gender dysphoria, or that the student is gender questioning, gender diverse, or identifies as transgender to anyone other than. See that again, where we're striking gender nonconforming and gender diverse?
Yeah, I've already marked that as a universal change. I'm going to
Okay.
control, replace, and get all of
Good.
those.
I actually would, and I think what I'm proposing is that we strike B completely and that we add parental involvement and disclosure so that we define and we help staff understand their role in engaging parents.
So what Ms. Allen is proposing is
Right.
a new, an insertion
Correct.
of a couple of additional sentences in front of what is there in blue.
Correct, which I've stated mine below, which is replacing with FCPS staff shall not disclose that a student is gender diverse or been diagnosed with gender dysphoria to anyone other than.
So I also do want to reference that we received an email from Ms. Day in regards to her position on, as a staff, as a FCPS staff, and in her speaking, I think, on behalf of maybe not all teachers, but some teachers that I guess that she has spoken to, that teachers are personnel, I'm just stating what she's given us, are mandatory reporters who are trained and required to report suspected abuse when we have reasonable cause. However, this clause places staff in a position of predicting whether an action may place a child at risk of abuse. That determination goes beyond our training, expertise, and professional role. It's not appropriate or safe to expect staff to assess potential risk, future abuse risk, without sufficient information, authority, or investigative capacity. So my suggestion is, in recognizing her point, and I understand her position, I'm not in total agreement with it, but I do think that this language was not intended to put a burden on staff in that way. But I think it's written because there are students who, in addition to disclosing their about their gender identity or their struggle or their confusion or whatever is happening with them, they may also indicate that there's a risk at home if parents are notified. So I wanted that to be on the record, that I do recognize that, but I don't necessarily want staff to be burdened with that unless it's actually disclosed by the student.
So I want to share a passage from the equivalent policy from Anne Arundel County Public Schools. School staff shall work with the student and the student's parents' guardians to develop an appropriate plan to accommodate and support the student and their gender identity unless there is a genuine safety concern for the student's physical, emotional, or mental health safety as determined by the principal or the principal's designee. So I took some, I found this because I told you I was going to do some more research coming out of our last meeting about this. And I spoke to my counterpart at Anne Arundel County to kind of talk through that provision. And they are of the view, and that doesn't mean you have to adopt this view, but they're of the view that a student coming forward and saying, I am fearful that something may happen if I reveal my gender identity to my family does not necessarily trigger the obligation to report to CPS. I specifically asked them that question because I know that was the concern that was raised at our last policy meeting. So they do not have that concern off of language that is very similar to what staff proposed here. And from what I understand, the expectation or the process there, it's not up to the teacher to decide. The teacher then would escalate that, and it even says it's the principal or the principal designee's determination, which I believe that's where they get involved, their school counselors or other mental health professionals that they have on staff. So I know that there was concern about this last time. We've heard public comment about that today. I know Dr. Harris, who's not here today, had spoken up about the CPS, but I think there is room for the policy to include language that provides a mechanism for students who fear for their safety to still be able to come forward.
I think there should be a mechanism for them to still come forward, but that shouldn't be the only reason parents are not informed. It goes totally contrary to what we say in A, which is FCPS respects the rights of students to express their gender identity or expression as they wish. Transgender, and we converted this to transgender and gender diverse students, have the right to discuss and express their gender identity and expression openly and decide where, when, and with whom to share that private information. It doesn't encompass whether I'm fear that I will be abused. It's just saying I'd like to have the choice to inform my parents when I feel it's right. And I think the policy as a whole, for as long as it's been in force, has had that same thought. I do recognize that, certainly we recognize that there is the fear of abuse, and if we can outline that in some other way, but it should not be the only reason that students or staff, well, in particular in staff, should not be the only reason that staff does not contact the family.
So, I'm sorry. So what comes to my mind from my school law days, and the principal has the extra kind of added position of being considered in loco parentis, is that correct?
Well, the system is considered in loco
Okay,
parentis.
not
It's
the
It's
teacher.
not an individual per se,
Okay.
it's the system takes on that role.
Takes on that role, but my understanding was that individual teachers don't like if a student's going to be searched, like their locker, that's not teachers, that's.
No, that's, well, it's principals, but others can be delegated that
Okay.
responsibility if they're properly trained.
So that, I mean, that's what comes to my mind, why the principal would be singled out or designated in their policy. But, and I understand totally what Mr. Rose has said, and I feel like the way it's stated, it's a little bit Minority Report-ish, you know, that movie where they decide ahead of time, you know, if you're guilty of something. That's what I know it may not be meant to, but I think that's where teachers have a problem, like, do I have a crystal ball? Am I supposed to, you know, understand or predict what the parent's reaction will be? But I feel like we have somewhere in here, and I apologize that I didn't find it, that it's always with the understanding that if there's a medical or some kind of concern, that kind of circumvents everything, and the guidance counselor or whatever would contact the parents. So I feel like we're sort of covered, but I don't know.
I'm for leaving as I stated. I mean, because to me, that strikes both A and Miss Allen's proposed B. Because, I mean, Miss Allen's proposed B is that the student may wish to use a different name or pronoun, and we're under no obligation to disclose that. So by saying that the only reason we won't disclose is if a student says they're in jeopardy of abuse, then we might as well strike A and B, which I'm not in favor of.
So what are the legal positions of the school and a minor, okay? Because all of these individuals, except for maybe, you know, a handful of students, have not reached the age of 18, okay? To have parents excluded from this conversation or dialogue or, you know, inclusion, because, you know, parents are the ones, you know, as I said, that they're the ones who are guiding the lives of their child. And I don't want to take that out of there. I don't want parents to be excluded in this policy. I think that parents have a right to understand what's going on with their kid in the school system. And there are a lot of undue influences that happen within the school day that children will come home and disclose this to parents, and they recognize that they're not aligned with what's going on, and they need to have the opportunity to address that.
But what you're detailing there is the reverse. The child is coming home and sharing with the parent, and then the parent can address that. In this case, the child is not sharing with the parent, and they have shared with the school. And The school is under no obligation. While there is no case law within our circuit, there is case law. There is case law in California. There's case law in California. This case where a student was outed by the school and they lost. So there is no current within our circuit. There is case law.
I do think,
I believe
though,
that's, go ahead.
I think these are like way too critical of decisions that are being made by minor students, that if we exclude parents from any of this information, I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable with not having parental involvement at some level, whether it's disclosed immediately or in some private discussion with the parent.
And hey, I'm a parent. I totally appreciate your perspective. I appreciate the perspective that we've heard from parents who have spoke and written us. But here's my point. I have not heard from one parent, not one, in a negative light that this has happened to. I have heard from a parent. I heard from a parent in which we did not disclose. And then the child disclosed. And the parent came forward and said, you know what? I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed in myself that my child didn't feel that they could come to me. That's the only parent I have heard from that said we kept it from them, but it worked out because they allowed the child to share that information with them on their own time. And I'll be very blunt here, the way I think about it. And maybe I'm putting myself way up on a pedestal. But I tried to think, as raising 2 children, how long would my children have gotten away with being transgender at school and I not know? From my perspective, not a week, maybe not a day, because I knew every friend, every parent, every contact. I was their parent. I was involved in their life in every single way. I somewhat am dumbfounded by the speakers who have no way never been influenced by this policy, but they're saying that their fear is that their relationship with their child is such that their child would not only keep it from them, but would be able to keep it from them. And I'm being blunt here, but I try to think about that if you're so detached from the life of your child, that not only are they keeping it from you, they're able to keep it from you. And I can't even think of a perspective where my child would have been able to do that for a week, much less a day. So that's my perspective. It's been the spirit of the policy since 2017, and I personally don't have any interest in changing that language.
You know, I appreciate that perspective, but and I'm not in disagreement, because I believe that is probably who you are as a parent. And I believe that there are probably a lot of parents who are just like you. I mean, I feel like I was like that too. But I do know that there are things that my kids have disclosed to me much later in their life that I had no clue about, none. And it was disappointing that at those moments, for whatever reason, that period of time, they didn't feel that they could disclose it to me. Had I been, contacted by a school official, which in some cases I was, and for certain behaviors, or not showing up at school and then having to find out where they are, but the school not giving me a heads up that this is something, so parents are busy, and I'm not saying that, all parents are going to parent in the same way. I understand that, but, there are times in periods in their lives where kids can keep things from them, and it can go on for a period of time.
And I recognize your perspective, I do. But I'm pretty set in that I'm wondering how long, I don't see it. And that doesn't necessarily totally drive my perspective here, because as we'll get to it later in the policy, I have proposed adding language that we're going to inform parents when the child is under the age of 12, because that meets the definition. We have law now that says children retain confidentiality, particularly for the services of mental health. And I'm adding that paragraph at the end. We'll have a discussion about that when we get to that. I think that I can see the difference there. I acknowledge when children are small, are extremely young, elementary school, but again, I could go back on, I can't think of an elementary school kid who would ever pull that off. But I'm acknowledging that there is law in place, that students are allowed to get mental health without the permission of, that's the law. They can get mental health services at the age of 12 and above. So, but it is the law. So, therefore, I am then later acknowledging that under the age of 12, we're gonna, and we'll get into my paragraph and how it's.
So
I think we're at an impasse here.
And so to get us out of the impasse that we're in, the question is, do you want to maintain the blue, what is B but will be C, as modified by Mr. Rose, and striking the fourth subparagraph? Or do you want to adopt Ms. Allen's proposed replacement of the existing B with a parental involvement and disclosure statement? Again, we can strike out of Ms. Allen's the except where disclosure replaces student at risk piece, if that's what you all want to do. And I guarantee you, this same conversation is going to be had with 9 individuals sitting up at that, on the dais. This is not the last time we're having this conversation.
So just, I mean, I guess the deciding vote is Ms. Yoho, but I am prescribing that 1C reads, FCPS staff shall not disclose that a student is transgender, gender diverse, or being diagnosed with gender dysphoria to anyone other than, and we maintain 1, 2, and 3 and delete 4.
That, in short, yes, that's what I would agree with. I was surprised. In my mind, we had kind of gotten rid of that as it was, because we'd heard so much about it. And without belaboring this, just to point out, I also have a friend whose child went through this, and the friend said in hindsight, and I think it's a different friend, but while it was difficult at the time to not be integrally involved with the students going through the situation, she felt that they're at that high school age where they're trying to become adults, and they're trying to separate from their parents. That's the natural order of things with support systems, that she felt that what the child needed was the school to be there, and it has all worked out, and life has gone on, and that's been many years ago. But I also think one of the things that people might not understand is how much information, especially once you get to middle and high school and you've got 100, 150 students. If teachers had to call parents every time, did you know your child's dating this child now? Did you know your child is, even in elementary, or I guess middle school, my grandson's in now, he has one friend who wants to be called one name by adults and one name by his friends. I mean, some of the points in this get to be, and that's different from this, but how much information, parents already complain about getting too many emails, so, teachers don't have time to call with every little change their child is going through.
But to get us moving along, you're okay with that as it is? Okay, so we've moved along. We're going to move on to what is now 1D1.
So Ms. Allen is proposing that what is presented as 1C, which will become 1D, that first paragraph, the board acknowledges the importance, all of that disappears, that 1 and 2 get combined into a single paragraph with the changes that are listed in the box. So it would be so if you adopt Ms. Allen's proposal, it would be, parents should be contacted whenever there is a mental health, or safety concern regarding the student. In all other circumstances, staff should encourage and support communication between students and students' parents. Staff may provide the student the opportunity to meet with an FCPS mental health professional to discuss a communication plan, period. But the school's role is to facilitate, not replace, the essential relationship between student and parent. That's what the new paragraph would read if you adopt Ms. Allen's proposal.
The only sentence not in there, I mean, the only maybe you just kind of, when I agree, is the first paragraph. Parents should be contacted whenever there is a mental health, or safety concern regarding the student. In all other circumstances, staff should make every effort to encourage and support communication between students and students' parents.
So you're saying you're okay with the rest of Ms. Allen?
Yeah, I think staff should make every effort was deleted. I'm just saying, I want to say staff should make every effort to encourage and support communication between students and parents.
Sorry, you're adding back in the every effort.
Staff
So,
should make every effort.
Okay.
I kind of like the first part. Is there a reason you wanted that taken out? The board acknowledges the importance of parental involvement.
No, I don't think I struck that.
We're not
Did-
striking that.
No,
We're not
no,
striking
Ms. Allen, that's what
You were
proposed.
going to strike that?
Yes, that's what you proposed.
That's what
Oh,
it
yes, she
says.
did. It says proposes striking paragraph C and replacing it with a
That might
combined
have been
version.
That might have been my numbering mistake because of what I would have assumed was C was what Mr. Rose had proposed before.
Sure.
So
So
I'm
keep-
aligned with keeping
Okay,
this
so
language
we're
in
keeping
blue.
that
Let's
paragraph.
keep C, and we're going to combine 1 and 2. And it should say staff should make every effort to encourage and support communication between students and the students' parents.
Okay. All right, we're making progress.
Jumped out of the confusing 1B, used to be 1C or whatever. Now we're into 2A1. And I think we've established that we're not. I think we've established that we're not going to add in that if they ask to be using another preferred name or pronoun, that we're not going to contact parents.
I mean, that is part of Ms. Allen's proposal, but, I mean, that's up to you all.
Ms. Yoho, you were the swing vote?
I know, and I didn't realize, because I emailed that, and I'm like, oh my nickname got put in print there. Yeah, I mean, again, that would end up being ridiculous. Logistically, for teachers to call every time, how do you know why a name is being changed?
Well, I mean, to Ms. Allen's credit, I understand why she recommended it in previous, so for consistency's sake, she's recommending it here. But we've made the decision not to incorporate it earlier, so there's no reason to incorporate it now. So the change that I had recommended is that, and I'll read the entire paragraph, FCPS recognizes the right of every student to be referred to by their preferred name and pronoun. All staff who work with students will have access to a current and complete list of preferred nouns and pronouns for all students, and FCPS will encourage their use in every interaction, in accordance with established case law around religious freedom and First Amendment rights. I added, unless the interaction could compromise student privacy or be considered bullying or harassment under policy 437. I think the law is kind of clear here. We had a case, but I think we also have to be clear that repetitive use of, however it might, there has to be an acknowledgement to teachers that they have to still be considerate. The case has been decided, but that they still have to be considerate of that student.
And I think in the comments that we heard earlier, what was offered up, which I thought was reasonable, is that, if staff are uncomfortable and this is something that, is an expression of religious freedom or their First Amendment rights, that they can call the student by the last name. And I'm not opposed to that. I think that that's probably a recommendation that, is reasonable. I just don't want to see staff in a position to be punished or disciplined for not using a preferred pronoun. Because there are times when it may not be intentional.
And no, but totally acknowledge that. And I don't think, I seriously doubt if that's ever happened in FCPS, where a teacher has been punished for unintentionally calling a student by the wrong name or the wrong pronoun. I've never heard a teacher come forward and say, I was punished because now, as the case says, they are not required to do so. What's interesting about that case is that the teacher used the student's preferred name. What they were saying, they did not want to use the preferred pronoun, which they won that case. Mm-hmm. But the teacher was using that student's preferred name. So,
and some of it has to do with grammatical and English correct use of the language.
The rules of grammar are becoming more fluid, I think. So here's what I would recommend. I would recommend, if you want to adopt the insertion that Mr. Rose is proposing into A1 regarding the interaction could compromise student privacy, I would actually break that sentence into two. So if you look earlier, there's an and, right? All staff who work with students will have access to a current and complete list of preferred names and pronouns for all students, and FCPS will encourage their use in every interaction, ... I would break those into two sentences and take the and out. I'll clean it up a little, I'll wordsmith it a little bit so it makes, it's clear. And then we can incorporate into 2, which says students and staff will not be disciplined for declining to honor the request to use a preferred name or pronoun, but will be encouraged to address the student by their last name. We can incorporate that into 2. That addresses the comment, Ms. Allen, that you've made, which in itself addresses the comments that we've heard in public comment. Is that acceptable?
are we still including that could be considered
Yes.
harassment? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, then it's
Yes.
acceptable.
Yes, and given everything I've said in the past on compelled speech, I have read the Blaming case from Virginia, so that is the law in Fourth Circuit.
And 2, as we move forward, 2A2 kind of almost reiterates that again. Student and staff will not be disciplined for declining to honor the request to use a preferred name or pronoun. And then I have recommended that we add, unless such interaction would constitute bullying or harassment under policy 437.
How do we determine that, though? I mean, I feel like that's kind of subjective there. It's a subjective statement that lends to somebody making a determination about what is bullying, a teacher's action, and determining the intention and, whether it's intentional or non-intentional. I don't know. I'd like to understand how that's handled before I would make,
And we have a process for receiving bullying complaints, and we conduct investigations, which usually involves interviewing the individuals, any witnesses, if there's written communication, reviewing those written communications, and, our staff then make an assessment. I mean, we have a process, it's not limited to this circumstance, we have a bullying and harassment process.
Yeah, what I was going to share is that teachers, principals, vice principals deal with this every day.
Assistant principals.
Yeah, I had a student one year, and we would get bullying complaints. It's like, no, you have to understand what bullying is. The student lashes out, but it's not bullying because so it's got a definition. So yeah, it gets investigated all the time.
And the reason I add the reference is I want to add some clarity to that sentence, that we are considering policy 437, that they work in.
I don't know that you
Congruence.
need it in 2 since you're adding it to 1.
Okay, as long as we understand the reference there. Again, this is the how, the regulation will, this is the what. Excuse me, this is the what, the how will be referenced in regulation.
Okay. All right, so that brings us to student records.
I support the staff's recommended alternative.
I do as well.
Yeah, because, actually, I would be in agreement with that. Though I like some of my language, I recognize that sex assigned at birth is really not the appropriate terminology to use or language to use, that it should be observed and then documented, basically, so.
So keep staff at staff. Okay.
And then on 3, I just, kind of a slight edit to Ms. Allen's suggestion is just, we maintain access to facilities, but still in the parentheses, restrooms, locker rooms, changing areas, as part of the title.
Good.
I just added access to your recommendation of edit.
Well, I won't be in agreement with any of this language. I'm just going to say, because I'm going to stand in a position that I think that we need to have biologically separate facilities for males and females. I will not, and I'm just going to have to stand in that position, because I will not agree to any language that diverts from that, or it indicates that an individual who is a male identifying as a female be allowed in the private spaces of females. I think it's a safety issue. There are, and I've gone through this before, I think that there are many, many reasons not to allow that to happen. And I think that girls should have, and boys should have, an expectation of privacy during the ages of K through 12, period. And most of this happens in middle school, in high school, and those are critical years in which, I just feel that that is such an imposition on both males and females to allow this type of accommodation. I think that you can make accommodations for these individuals in a way that is non-stigmatizing, and I would encourage us to write language around that, which I think I've already done, but I cannot get on board with any language that will allow the male who's identifying as a female or female identifying as a male to be allowed in the facility, restroom, locker room, private area that they identify with.
And I'll only fall back on that the law is in place. That we're following the law. So until that changes, what we are trying to do is within policy, try to offer as many opportunities for privacy and privacy spaces for those that are uncomfortable or feel like they might be placed in that situation. But we are following the case law within our circuit.
But I think, and I understand where you're coming from, because I looked up some of the case law, I looked up what's happening now in the courts and what the Supreme Court is going to be hearing and reviewing. And, you know, I think on the side of safety, you know, we have a responsibility to our students to ensure their safety, period. I mean, that's it. I see this as something that counters that position completely.
I don't see it that way, and the part where sincerely held part of the student's core identity, I think that's a key provision in there that Mr. Rose has added in, because you'll hear stories of, well, a boy acting as a girl went in that's a whole separate issue. That is not a transgender student or a gender questioning student. That's why the sincerely held part of the student's core identity is very important, because if you're in that, it's just, without going on, because we're running, that's just a completely separate issue of safety of a student that has issues with a student that and is trying to do something nefarious with a student in a gender questioning situation.
And I appreciate you bringing that, because that is exactly why I added that to that, is I want to take away that mythology that's happening. It's not, but I want to remove the mythology that it is. So
I think that there are examples of exactly what you're talking about, where there is a student who has, you know, presented as the opposite sex and has requested to use restrooms. And we know that there are incidences where that has happened, and there has been adverse actions by that individual to another, and they caused harm, you know. And we, you know, I think, again, you know, even if you say, you know, core identity or even define that, you know, it's still subjective, you know. I can't get my head around it. I can't do it.
again, I understand that. I understand your point of view. I'm not aware of any adverse circumstances where a student has been a predator in one of our bathrooms as
Not in
portraying as another
FCPS,
sex.
but there are other systems that have encountered this. I mean, coming to a school near you is basically how I see it.
I don't see that as any other issue than, unfortunately, the sexual assaults that occur in our bathrooms on, unfortunately, a basis across our country. Most of those assaults involve male on male, female on female. I don't think we can just arbitrarily cross off one party. Yes, it will happen, and it will be dealt with. It could happen, not will, could happen, and it will be dealt with under the code of conduct. But I felt like that's important that we add that it's a sincerely held core belief. So, and again, yes, there are court cases, but Grimm is the case, and Grimm is very clear.
So again, just to keep us moving along, because we've kind of, again, bogged down a little bit. Ms. Allen has made it very clear she's not in favor of the language as presented. Mr. Rose, Ms. Yoho, it's really at this point, at least for this section, it's your show, because we know that you are going to, at least Mr. Rose, you've articulated your disagreement. I think Ms. Yoho, you have as well with Ms.
The
Allen.
policy's been, that we currently have, has been in place since, 2017. But I do want to get back to, so yes, I'm, along with that, sincerely held part of the student's core identity. But I want to see, have we addressed staff's concern?
So the question that staff poses under 3A is, does this adequately address a cis student who is uncomfortable using a facility at the same time as a transgender, non-binary, genderqueer student? That was what was raised to me when I convened my group.
And my response was that concern was covered in 3B, because 3B says any student, regardless of gender or gender identity or expression, who is uncomfortable for any reason using gender safe will be provided a safe and non-stigmatizing alternative.
We're good?
Yep. Okay. So then, are we adopting access to facilities, parentheses, restrooms, locker rooms, changing areas, and the subsequent paragraphs as presented by staff with Mr. Rose's minor tweak to 3A?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then just to highlight it for the sake of making sure it's known, staff tweaked 3D at the request of the operations team. This is, as presented, this is a little different than what was discussed at a prior meeting, but this is based on having shared this with our operations team and asking them to weigh in on that one paragraph.
Agreed.
All right.
All right, so let's move on to 4.
Of course, you'll find, again, I am in total opposition to the proposed language by Mr. Rose and existing language that is in the policy. My proposals are there for that. And again, this comes down to safety, privacy, fairness, equality, all of those issues that have been expressed over and over again in regards to the physical differences between male and females.
So, Ms. Allen, can I ask you a question? The language you propose in A, to replace A, participation in interscholastic, intramural, and physical education activities should be based on biological sex as recorded on a student's official birth certificate. In Maryland, there is a process for changing the official birth certificate as it reflects your gender. So it is possible that even under your proposal, there will be a born female or a born male student participating in a cis female sport because they've gone through that process. So what you're proposing doesn't necessarily resolve the concern that you're raising.
So I agree with you, and I understand why you're questioning that. In my review of some of the court cases, the recommendation is that there really should be no, for most students that we're dealing with are probably, I'm not going to say this because I can't generalize and I don't know, but I would think that their birth certificate would not be changed until after they had fully transitioned to the other. But I don't know that. I don't know. I can't make that assumption.
Generalize that.
I can't generalize that. What I do know is that if they do change their birth certificate, we as a system can't question that.
That's true.
We can't ask them anything that's invasive, and we can't go to extraordinary measures to exclude that individual. So I would keep that language. I mean, I'm going to support that language that I proposed, but in understanding that there are those circumstances where somebody may have changed their identity.
And again, I acknowledge your concerns, and I think I've made other comments, I've made my thoughts very clear. I have actually wavered on this to some extent, admittedly. I think we all sometimes struggle with this. But at the K through 12 level, I do look at it as part of our curriculum. I do look at it as this is part of the curriculum, and I'm not comfortable with excluding individuals from opportunities within that curriculum. With that said, and I said, once we get to NCAA level, Olympic level, I've made clear that I wish the NCAA had the guts to address this issue instead of just folding. But I have concerns at the highest levels of sports. I totally acknowledge that. For the K through 12 level, one, again, I hate to keep reiterating, there is case law out of West Virginia that has been accepted. We most likely, if we read the tea leaves, will be back here next fall changing the language in this policy, because a case has been appealed to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has accepted that case. However, there was no stay on that case. That case is in effect. So that young lady in West Virginia is allowed to play sports based on her gender identity until the Supreme Court decides.
I think
So-
she's matriculated out of the system at this point, but yes.
Yeah. But it is in place. They did not stay it. So we may be back here next fall. If you read the tea leaves, most likely we will be. But in the meantime, that's why I added paragraph C, because I do acknowledge that there can be, as I've said, in rare cases where concerns regarding competitive fairness or player safety arise, staff are authorized to address each situation on its individual merits, consistent with federal and state law, applicable athletic association guidance, and board policy. Any decision shall prioritize the rights, privacy, and dignity of all student athletes and consider all reasonable solutions to ensure equitable access to competition regardless of gender identity. So in that situation, I am acknowledging that there are cases where there can be safety concerns, there can be competitive concerns, and I think it's fair that we acknowledge that. There have been cases in other states where they've acknowledged that fact, where they did not disallow the student to participate according to their gender identity, but they recognized that there was a competitive imbalance. And in some cases, they recognized there was a safety imbalance. So they found ways around it, and that's what I'm proposing.
Yeah, the sports become so nuanced because especially my two older children, my youngest didn't particularly get involved in things, but the older two, my son and daughter, played sports. They played single gender sports. They got hurt. My son didn't even want to play football, and my daughter didn't want to play softball when they went to college because my son, he wants his brain researched when he dies, because everything he went through starting in youth football, the changes his body was put through in a single gender sport. So there's a whole lot there. Also, if you look at it, yes, testosterone can give an edge, and then it cannot. And they found that in track, long distance and sprinting, testosterone gave an advantage. In the middle distance, it did not. And that's what studies had shown at that time, because it came up with an intersex Olympic athlete who turned out to be intersex. But also, when this came up in front of the state a few years ago, it was virtual. We were in the virtual times, and so the hearing and the students that testified just would not have presented safety issues. But I acknowledge that they could exist. And so I think sports is one of the ones that's difficult.
So returning to the language that's presented, the only changes to what's in blue that Mr. Rose is offering is to strike from B the reference to when doing so does not place the students at risk of abuse. And in C, changing any decisions shall prioritize the rights to any decisions should prioritize the rights. Ms. Allen, I acknowledge, I understand you do not support this language. So the question is, Ms. Yoho, obviously Mr. Rose, you proposed the language, so I know you support it. Ms. Yoho, okay.
Yes.
So adopt as presented by Mr. Rose. It looks like paragraph 5, everyone's in agreement on. No one has any edits.
We do not.
Paragraph 6, Your floor.
Presented my edit, that I do want there to be consultation with the student, FCPS staff, and if supportive, any gender diverse students' parents.
So you would be okay in disclosing something that wasn't disclosed previously to the parent at this point?
The phrase is if supportive. Striking when doing so does not place the student at risk of abuse or the student's parents. It's make arrangements in consultation with the student, FCPS staff, and if supportive, any gender diverse students' parents.
So sorry. I was just going to say, I support my language that I proposed. Again, these are just, I guess, non-negotiables for me.
It says the policy committee well, no, I'm looking at the bottom note. The policy committee recommends that once approved, this gets over to, so we're going to take the exact language that we.
We're just gonna, the approval will be, and what the board will be approving is picking up 6, taking it out of this policy, dropping it word for word into 414, and by virtue of that vote, because it'll have been voted upon twice, we will make the change to 414. We won't have to bring 414 back to the board.
So that does mean we need to wordsmith it here or decide on which, okay.
Correct.
Again, we look to Ms. Yoho.
Yeah, sorry, just making sure of particular things. Yeah, I mean, I think Mr. Rose's language allows for protections, but sticks to the law and the general kind of tenor of the policy as we're crafting it, so yes.
And just for the public, I wanted to acknowledge that we don't do overnight field trips per se without enormous parental involvement. I mean, if Celeste was here, she would acknowledge that every band trip, my daughter went on 4 consecutive theater trips to Florida. There were at least 8 to 10 parents served as chaperones. There's enormous parental involvement in these trips. These are not solely FCPS trips. These are trips that they actually have to apply with FCPS. We're going to take our theater program to New York to see shows, or we're going to go to Florida and participate in a band competition. This is an enormous undertaking that is, as Celeste could attest, is mainly run by the parents. We're just to prove it, that yes, the band director, the theater director attend, they go, but it's the parents are the ones that have to drive this because it's such an undertaking. It's not covered by, it's cost. The cost is covered by the parents. So there's a lot of parental involvement here. This is not, so I just want to acknowledge that this is not something where we take kids on overnights and only a coach goes or only a theater director goes. These are enormous undertakings, and they're actually a little rare, but parental involvement is significant.
And I recognize that through the presentation that was given by staff, in regards when we went over this policy and what this, the overnight trip policy really, entailed and how many overnight trips there actually were during the school year. And so I did take that into consideration when I put together the language. But behind this, my proposed language is also helping parents and staff, giving them guidance, because, if they're responsible for students when their parents are not directly involved in the supervision of that student and they're responsible for that student, I think that this kind of clears the air that you know, there are consequences if, you know, if the opposite sex is in, you know, is invading the space of the privacy of another individual. So, and that there will be reasonable accommodations made when requested.
So I think we're back to you, Ms. Yoho.
So I'm trying to see, the reasonable accommodations may be provided. That part, I'm good with pulling that out. I was trying to see if that was anywhere else in the suggested language, either already in the policy or in Mr. Rose's updates, because that part I think would be fine. I think that would be the normal course of things. Yeah, I mean, my experience is exactly, it's boosters. I took students, or I kind of followed them to, elementary students to Knoxville, Tennessee for global finals of Destination Imagination. Every room had a parent, basically. But that would be the only thing, and I think that's kind of already in the whole policy overall, but if we're moving it over, so that would be the only part, reasonable accommodations, e.g. single occupancy rooms, privacy partitions may be provided for students who request additional privacy, but that, again, could be for any student.
So now,
Is that a yes?
well,
I think it's already there in D, I'm sorry, make efforts to accommodate any student who desires greater privacy.
so Ms.
It's
Yoho,
already there.
you're okay with the language as presented? Okay. All right, so 7, I think there's no disagreement that we're going to strike that paragraph from the policy. And that brings us to 8.
I'm sorry, Mr. Blovis, if I can just real quickly say, striking 7, yes, but do you understand it hasn't been that many years since graduation robes were changed to be single gender? And that was like, blew a lot of people's minds. What, we're not gonna have the boys in one color and the girls in another? Most of our schools had that. That has not been that long.
We have a separate policy that addresses dress code.
So I understand, my point is, changes are hard.
Yeah.
But now everybody accepts that one as it's always been.
So now we're on to 8, training and professional development. And I'll go through the 8E, I made a, slight adjustment to that. I don't even know what my specific, how I,
Yeah, I don't know,
I don't see any difference.
I don't know, I don't see any difference from,
I don't think what I have here is any different.
no, and again, I think I've mentioned this previously, the insertion there is really to acknowledge the Supreme Court's decision in Mahmoud.
Question, just clarifying, Mahmoud, there's a stay, right? That is still working through the courts, is my understanding. So the Mahmoud is upheld because there was a stay, but it's still working its way through the courts, I believe.
I believe MCPS has reached a settlement agreement with the families who brought the action, so I don't know that there's going to be any further litigation.
Be any further litigation on it?
I mean, if they haven't finalized the settlement, they're working on it. I don't think there's going to be any further litigation. Now, Ms. Allen does propose in E to replace the "for all students while ensuring the parental rights" with and are to notify parents to ensure that parents who may object to gender-inclusive material are recognized and provided options for these students based on parents and students' religious, scientific, philosophical, or common sense objections. I did share that with staff, and they are concerned about how that would be implemented.
I
But-
think that the sentence that you added, while ensuring parental right to direct their child's religious upbringing, is respected.
Okay.
If staff had, so I amended my my statement there on F and just saying that a discussion of this policy and its relationship with our district's bullying harassment policy, policy 437.
And Ms. Allen has proposed to strike the reference to this policy. Staff recommend keeping it in because as part of the training that we do on all of the professional development, this training on the systems policy makes sense to staff.
So now we are on to 8G, which is
Before we
my
get to 8G
addition.
Before we get to 8G,
I'm sorry.
I just want to make sure that
To make sure they're.
we have consensus on 8F with the addition that Mr. Rose is proposing to add and its relationship with our district's bullying harassment policy.
I'm in agreement.
Good, me too.
Okay.
And so I offered that we add paragraph 8G. And it's, again, my acknowledgement that I believe in following the law. And in this case, 8G would be parental notification for students under 12. When students younger than 12 years old request a change in pronouns, name usage, or access to gender-specific facilities, the school will notify the parents or guardians in a timely and supportive manner, recognizing the central role of parents in the care and development of younger children and consistent with Maryland law on minor consent for mental health treatment and confidentiality. Notification will be conducted in a manner that supports the student's safety, affirms their dignity, and seeks to promote collaboration between the family and the school.
I do not find objection to that.
All right, so just to be clear, this would not be 8G, this would be its new standalone 8 because we eliminated 7. So
Yeah,
what was 8
right,
is now
right.
7.
See, you caught me. I couldn't even keep up with all that.
But before we close out the discussion, you did have a proposal originally to add a new G that speaks to policy 443 and policy 437 are not separate silos, they reinforce one another.
That's what I amended with my,
Gotcha. So you're
that's what
taking
I
that-
amended with my F.
Gotcha,
My F,
okay.
I just got off my soapbox and just said, let's just talk about the policies.
Gotcha. Understood. Understood. So that actually gets us through 443. We have something that can be presented to the board. It is slated for a first reading at your next board meeting, not this evening, but 2 weeks from now.
Thank you. Thank you. And thanks staff for the work that they did. I'm not so sure I feel the relief that I thought I would, but
I'm
So I-
relieved to get it to first reading. So I want to thank, Celeste isn't here, but I want to thank everyone here for their work on this. We've been working on this, I think, far too long, but I think we did our due diligence in diving into it as far as we could. So I'm happy to get it before the full board, and then we'll go from there.
So I do think we need a motion, a second, and a vote.
All right, do we have a motion to move 443 to first reading?
I move we move policy 443 to the full board for a first reading.
I'll second.
All those in favor? That is unanimous.
Fantastic. All right.
All right, so we're going to move on. We'll begin moving on to 1.5, Policy 101, Organization of the Board.
So Policy 101, if you're following along in the packet, I suggest you start on page 52. This is the second time it's presented to the Policy Committee. It was previously discussed on August 27th, 2025, and it was brought forward at the request of 3 members of the board. The discussion in August focused on defining the board president's authority to expend funds and incorporating the importance of conferring with the other individuals on the board. So based on that conversation, we have some edits to propose, some of which are clarification and some of which address the concerns raised at the last board meeting. So there is no proposed change to the policy purpose. There are 3 changes proposed to the definitions. These are all just clarifying changes. There's no substantive change resulting, just a little bit cleaner language. The policy statement remains unchanged. The first change you will see in the implementation is all the way down in section D2B3, kind of middle of the page, and that's just a clarification to add omitted words. So it's the paragraph that starts at the public meeting called for the election of officers. In the middle of that paragraph, it said, if the nomination by another board member, the nominee must declare they accept the nomination. There was clearly missing words. So we are correcting that. In D2C, this is a clarification that staff is requesting to make it clear that it is the board president who conducts the evaluation of employees. You don't have a lot of them, but you do have them. And to have one voice is easier for staff or for the superintendent than to have 7 different voices all chiming in. It really puts the onus on the president to do the work of collating the board member comments for staff.
And we've basically been doing that, so.
But I was gonna say that
Yeah.
mirrors our process, but I don't love the word conducting. But maybe, I'm not gonna, but I don't know that describes the process, but I'm not gonna, get all bent out of shape.
It could just be responsible for the evaluation of board employees.
I would prefer that. We're on page 2 of 8 in policy 101 meetings. Yeah, I think that just, I prefer that. I'm just saying taking out the word conducting, and it would just be responsible for the evaluation of board employees. And it says president with input from board members. And I don't like the word conducting because it's more compiling and then presenting, but, so I think if you just take
Yeah,
conducting, that's great.
That's fine.
I think Dr. Shergo has something
They
to
have some
share.
input on that.
I might just suggest a little bit more of a tweak. Technically, they are FCPS employees assigned to the board. And so I think it's important to maybe note that language somehow.
Except the superintendent.
Right, but are you including your assistant and your ombuds in this? Right, so because of that. So I don't know, Mr. Blivis, if you want to distinguish, the superintendent is the employee of the board, but the executive assistant and the ombuds are FCPS employees that are assigned to roles that support the board. So I just don't know if that distinction is important.
Could you articulate that in that sentence, Mr. Blivis?
Yeah, it would be evaluation of this, I would change it to the evaluation of the superintendent and FCPS employees assigned to support the board. I mean,
Be
that-
acceptable?
Yeah.
I have a question, though. Dr. Sergo, so in that case, though, is the board still responsible for the evaluation of those employees?
Right, as a supervisor for those positions.
All right, thank you. You're indicating that you want the word conducting.
Yeah.
You
Yes.
want a different,
I just, Mr. Blivis said, responsible for the evaluations of the superintendent and other FCPS
It's just
employees
deleting the
assigned.
word conducting.
thank you, sorry, I
Yeah.
must not have been paying
No,
attention.
it's fine.
So the next change is the big change that I think the board, the concern that caused all of this to come to the panel, is in a new D6, which addresses the board president's authority to expend funds. And I'm just going to read it for the sake of reading it. Decisions regarding the expenditure of board or system funds generally should be decided during a public meeting of the board, subject to the requirements for quorum and voting described in Board Policy 102 meetings. Notwithstanding the foregoing, where exigent circumstances make it necessary, the board president is authorized to encumber up to $50,000 of board funds without requiring a full meeting of the board. In the event the board president exercises the discretion to determine exigent circumstances exist requiring the expenditure of funds, the board president will notify the full board of the decision in writing within 7 days, including a description of the exigent circumstances, the services or goods purchased, the expected total cost, and a rationale for the decision. The $50,000 is not an arbitrary number. That is the number that the superintendent has delegated to our purchasing manager to make purchases on behalf of the system without requiring the superintendent's signature on the contract. So it's aligning the board president's authority with our purchasing manager's authority.
It's
that's the
why
rationale
every
for the number.
dollar doesn't come before us.
Right, that's the rationale for that number. If you want to set a lower number or a higher number, feel free. I just wanted to have a rationale for why staff was proposing a $50,000 marker. Hopefully this addresses the concern. It ensures the transparency and the clarity, even if it comes after the fact, because there are exigent circumstances that require quicker action that can be taken by convening a full board.
So there are a couple, I have a question. So in COMAR, is there any COMAR regulation that regulates board expenditures? Is there anything?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Not that I'm aware
I
of.
didn't think so. But that's what I thought that 50,000 was aligned with. What, no, I thought it was what you said, the purchasing protocols of the system, because Dr. Dyson was very kind in providing me the manual, which was voluminous. But I would like to see that the president will notify the full board of the decision in writing within 3 days, not 7 days. I think that that's reasonable. 3 days, there's including a description of, I feel like after 7 days, there may be word that gets out in other areas. I think 3 days is a tighter time frame.
Can we just make it 3 business days?
Okay.
Whenever
Just
possible.
in case it happened on a Friday, it would be Tuesday.
Can we just add qualifying whenever possible? I don't disagree 7 days, but I don't know, since it's hardly ever happened, you might not know what the cost will be if you're hiring an attorney, and maybe you do it on day 1, and maybe finally day 3 you get the cost, and then you're like, okay, or.
Well, I would think that if the expenditure came before the president and she had to make, or he had to make a decision, that there would already be an indication of what that cost would be, because we'd have that parameter of under 50.
Yeah, so in the instance that gave rise to this whole discussion, it was a flat fee that was discussed in advance, and we knew what the amount was. Now, over time, that amount actually grew, because as more complaints were received, it expanded the scope of the work that the individual was doing. So that number did grow, but it was a known dollar figure. Typically, if you're hiring a lawyer, when I ask for a budget before I make a proposal to the superintendent to say, do we want to retain this individual? So I'm going to have a sense. I mean, I've asked this board for authority in the past and in closed session for a budget approval for litigation-related purposes. It would be unlikely that it would come up with an open-ended, and that is why the expected total cost is included as an item that the board president would have to include in the memo.
Just to Ms. Allen's point, 3 days seems reasonable to me. Can you think of any, and do we even need to put in whenever possible, or just?
No, I mean, 3 days, I think 3 days is fine. I mean, I think this is not your full-time job. You have lives outside of here. You have jobs outside of here. You have things that are keeping you busy outside of the work you do for the system. And so 7 days was, I think, intended to allow for the fact that, if you're on vacation and and I have to call you and say a decision needs to be made, 7 days gives you time to get back and do the memo, but in that circumstance, it could be delegated to Mr. Rose as the vice president at the moment. I think 3 days is fine.
Yeah, let's go with 3 business days.
I think that's pretty much, it may not have even been 3 days that we were all notified when that occurred. It certainly wasn't 7.
All right, so the next change is in the next paragraph E, just adding that if both the board president and the vice president are unavailable, that there will be someone who has been designated to serve in that capacity, because you can have a meeting with quorum without the president and vice president, and so someone has to be told that they're taking charge, and so just kind of accounting for that circumstance.
Yep, I think that's worthwhile addition.
That's something that we would, that the president and vice president would designate at the election, like once they're elected and they're in their roles, and then they would say, okay, in the absence of us, then
Yeah.
X number.
Yes, because at the point where you've lost a third person, now you've only got, well, I mean, actually, even then, you'd still have 4 is still quorum.
Can we just take out annually? Could the board president designate a board member to assume such responsibilities? And that way, they're
Just
not.
do it as
I mean,
needed.
Yeah, as needed.
Okay.
So just take out annual. That way, it's not one person.
Yep. Okay. The next change is in the advisory committee section in 3D. This was discussed and raised at the prior policy committee meeting, just adding except as the law may require to the compliance with the Open Meetings Act. That really only applies to the ethics panel, which the ethics panel is exempt from open meetings because of the nature of the work that they do. All the other changes, I believe, are adding the Oxford commas, updating the website that references the student member of the board's space on our webpage, clarifying that the student member is a non-voting member of the board. Is considered a member of the board is actually not an accurate statement because they are members of the board. They are just non-voting members of the board. So this is clarifying, what their status is to more accurately reflect what the law requires. And then there's some edits in the related information just to clarify.
I knew in my mind there was one place where I didn't like the and I'm like, oh my gosh, now I've lost it. This is it. The student member is considered a non-voting member of the board, period. Their input is encouraged, valued, and recorded. Somehow, and I don't want to put but. So I think just either a semicolon or 2 sentences.
I can make it 2 sentences.
And is this an area where we should go ahead and add that the student member is permitted to submit agenda requests and sign on to agenda requests?
It's in the meetings. It's
Okay.
It's in the meetings
Okay,
policy.
just want to make sure that we didn't need to put it here as well.
No, we incorporate that into the meetings policy.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so the recommendation is to approve policy 101 as is or with the edits, to advance to the board for first reading.
I will move policy 101, moved to the full board for first reading.
Second.
All those in favor? And that's unanimous.
Okay.
These old policies are like,
So
are interesting because, it's like, I'm not sure why it exists.
So, I assume you're referring to our next agenda item, Policy 507, Summer School Eligibility. This is here for information discussion, so we do not have any staff written proposals. It is a robust policy that will take a significant amount of time to review. It's a whole 3 sentences. This is the first time it is on for policy committee review. You can find it on page 61 of your packet. And it is the first of the 500 series policies that the policy committee is going to consider in its regular course of review.
Is there any other policy this can be incorporated into?
Well, so there is actually a place for this policy, and staff does have some ideas with respect to what this could and should address. But it's going to, what we propose is we abandon this in its entirety and we just present a whole new policy because this one hasn't been updated in 17 years. First, we're going to propose a title change from summer school eligibility to summer programming eligibility, because that is a broader applicability. We do have, in particular, I believe in the arts, we have music and theater programs that we run during the summer that would not be covered by this when you call it summer school, because they're not summer school programming. They are summer programming. So we're recommending a title change.
And it almost brings a stigma to it, so I like the program. I like the programming.
So there's 3 substantive items that that staff are recommending, and of course we would welcome other ideas from the panel. One is that there be a board statement on eligibility to participate in summer programming, that it is limited to currently enrolled FCPS students. Anyone else who wants to participate may participate if they're willing to pay for it. We have had in the past occasions where students who are homeschooled have sought to participate, go to summer school or participate in summer programming. We've had out-of-district students seek to participate in our summer programming. This is FCPS work. This is for FCPS students, and so the recommendation is that the board make a statement to that effect. The second is that it be a clear statement that summer programming is budget dependent. We do not offer the same programming necessarily from year to year. If you look over the last 5 years, it has changed dramatically from what we've offered to what we then to what we offer now. And that's a budget issue. And then lastly, the staff is proposing to clarify that the extended school year programming is not summer programming subject to this policy. Extended school year is programming that's made available for students with disabilities who need that programming as part of their individual education plan. It is not subject to any summer programming eligibility requirements because it's a part of the program, a part of the need.
Where do we address that, though, for that?
The extended school year?
Yeah.
That should be addressed in the students with disabilities policy, which I believe is one of the 500 series that we'll get to.
Okay, all right, just
But
wanted
if
to
it's
make.
not, we can incorporate that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I just want to make sure that that is put in somewhere, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
agreed. We've had extended year, and I've tried to explain to board members in the past, this has come up kind of the whole time I've been on the board, and it's like, no, it's not the same as, not compensatory services, and it's not, summer school or a summer program. It's a totally different being altogether, so I like that. And there was something, New Horizons. Does that fit anywhere in this? Because,
What is New Horizons?
okay, sorry, but it's one of our partnerships. It's with SHIP and FCPS, so I didn't know how that fit in. Because that's a totally different thing. That is for homeless students, and they actually get a stipend, but that's out of their budget, so.
I don't know because I'm not familiar with the program, so I'm going to have to. I can't phone a friend. I don't know that there's only 2 people in the room. I don't know, but it's something that when we come back with language to propose, we can address that if it's appropriate to address it.
That's what I meant by phone a friend. I didn't
I mean,
mean right
maybe
now.
you take a look at partnerships that that we have for summer programming and add in a paragraph there that, if the funding is directed from a partnership, blah, 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 whatever.
Yeah, and I don't know, but I think that's to clarify, because I have no idea, but that just popped in my head. Since it does take place at one of our schools, it's with our partners, all that.
I mean, we also have park and rec programs too that, that are offered at our schools during the summer programs. So, but that would be considered a partnership too.
And that may be more community use of our facility as opposed to, because if it's fully staffed, funded, and operated by the Parks and Rec department.
True,
That may be really just a community use and not even
Yeah.
our program.
Yeah, I don't know if they employ FCPS and
Yeah, I don't
staff
know.
to
So
do
I,
anything.
but these are good questions that we can address, I can take back to staff and we can address when we come forward with a written proposal, which won't be long. It may not be more than the page we have, but it's gonna be more than the paragraph.
I looked at this first on my phone and I was looking for, are we like taking this out, you know? It's like, what is with this? So that explains.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How would we determine the cost for a homeschool student or a private school student?
So this is where I'd have to defer to the expertise of Ms. Clayball, but we have a process, or we have a way of calculating when a student who lives out of our system wants to come to our school. I don't think it happens very often, but we do have a mechanism for determining a tuition rate. So I can only assume that there is a mechanism for determining that with respect to summer programming as well. And I think it would also, if we were to allow outside, I think the board would want to say something about provided spaces available and prioritizing FCPS students.
And, yes. Yeah, I'd be curious to see the formula. I know it's weird, but I just have a thing about particularly homeschool students, because I've actually been in Annapolis and supported allowing homeschool students to play sports within their district, within their feeder, at the fee. So but yeah.
What is, I'm at a loss for the word because I want to make a motion, but if we are going to eliminate this policy we're not eliminating it.
There's no action required today because we're not presenting any language, but we would decommission the existing version and propose a new version.
Just our initial discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah. So there's no action. You don't have to make a motion at all. We're just here to discuss what your interests are so we know what language to put in.
Yes, great. Thank you.
Yeah. So if that's it, then, yeah. Oh, no, I can't. I have to come back for our policy 102 second reading and policy 436 and policy 405, which are on for first reading.
The cot still upstairs?
I can curl up underneath my desk. No, I've got plenty to do and enough Dayquil that I'll muddle through.
So is there anything else? So we're adjourned.
We are adjourned.